Julius' sister, and today we're reading Saturnastra Melina. This is chapter 17, Turmoil. Over the following months, Melina took care of Impedia's affair in Sassari, and she transferred all of the power to Lucrezia. Lucrezia had blossomed into a savvy leader in less than a year, and unlike her mother, she was not burdened by morality or tradition. And this was in part due to Melina's influences, and Lucrezia was determined to expand La Divina clan's influence by any means necessary. And like her mother, she shared in the dream of winning Sassari's independence. And in order to make this dream come true, she needed wealth and power. She was years away from earning the loyalty of the men her mother commanded, and she was thankful that Melina, in her own way, was keeping her ranks under wraps. And her first major decree was to free all of her slaves, and it was a bold move on her part. Slavery was quite commonplace in the kingdom, and this was a calculated move on her part, and Melina had hinted at the turmoil occurring in the Elven kingdom, and whenever there was a problem with the Alpha-Seer, all of the elves were compelled to follow in suit. And the Alpha-Seer was the king priest of the Elven lands, and he lived in a quasi-autonomous region in the Elven forest. And he had a sort of agreement with Bersame. In exchange of maintaining his autonomy, he would give Bersame his surplus of women and children in the form of slaves. This meant that the majority of the slaves were of Elven descent, and elves lived for centuries, so this arrangement was meant to buy them time. And it was said that the elves were waiting for Bersame to die in order to reclaim their independence, their place as the dominant species of the continent. And for this reason, the sudden slave revolt was unexpected, and the elves were too attached to life to reset over something as trivial as personal freedoms. And the slave revolt started in the human cities surrounding the Elven forest. And the violence only lasted a few hours, and the elves were pacified by sunset, and this burst of violence naturally attracted the attention of the lords. And the lord sent an inquest to figure out what had spurred the rebellion, and the inquest was limited to the cities where the incident took place. And Frederick also participated in this inquest, and as a late Melina had Frederick employing his talents as a spying master instead of a bounty hunter. And unlike his peers, he had dared to brave the Elven forest to find answers. Though he failed to make contact with the elves, he acquired interesting information from the fairies that cohabited the forest, and he sent a summary of his observations to Melina. And these reports were read out by Franny, and she also signed on Melina's behalf, and she did this because she assumed that Melina couldn't be bothered to read or write. And when Melina ever wrote something, she always used a weird swirly cursive and dots under it and weird letters. And at one time, Franny got a bit creative with her role as Melina's secretary. However, Melina chastised her for taking such liberty, and now she was always keenly aware of what Franny wrote for her. After finishing her report, Franny placed the documents before Melina, and Melina only grazed over them before nodding with satisfaction. And at times like this, Franny wondered if Melina was only being stubborn about writing, or if she was just too lazy to bother with it. Melina used her Impedia's office as her own during this proceeding, and this was done so in part to allow Impedia a chance to keep tab on the happenings of her kingdom. And from time to time she would meet with Melina to offer counsel. And Franny asked, "You do not find this odd? The doors are full to consider this a true Elven rebellion," said Melina. "How so?" inquired Franny. "Read between the lines, Franny dear. Freddy was on site in Aragon when that happened, and he describes how the elves suddenly stopped what they were doing, and all simultaneously started attacking everything around them," said Melina, pointing to one of the letters. "I still don't see it, Melina," said Franny, shaking her head. Cedric entered the room and said, "She means that the elves attacked other elves as well. If it were a true rebellion, then there would have been intentional, some planning. This is more like a mad frenzy than anything." "Eavesdropping at you, Cedric, and here I thought that we had come to an understanding," said Melina, chuckling. "Forgive me, but my habits are hard to break," said Cedric. "How was your visit to the tower?" asked Melina. "You already know what happened, my dear, so why bother asking?" said Cedric, annoyed. "Oh my," said Franny, taken aback by the outburst. "Aren't you even remotely tired of being strung along by this?" said Cedric, gesturing with his hand. "See here, she obviously knows what's going to happen, but chooses to remain silent to string us along, and why not share some of your wisdom, oh mighty wise Melina?" Saturn finished his exposition by giving a mocking bow, and Melina regarded him coolly, and when she spoke, she did so with the same tone, with the same mocking voice she used whenever her little baron was having a tantrum. I share with you all I deem necessary for you to know, and I may remind you that just a few months ago I told you that Zuberos had his days numbered, and it's not my fault that you not take my words to heart. Sally stopped pacing for a second, and he looked up and then nodded, and then he said, ah yes, you did mention something of the sort. Just yesterday you bored me with your long-winded expositions to keep me from leaving. I do not understand what happened in the Tower of Zuberos, inquired Franny. Zuberos is dead, he is God, said Melina, laughing. This isn't funny, Melina. What is it to become of us mages under the leadership of this child, said Sassari, sitting down to face Melina. You are just jealous that Sibano got to be leader instead of you, and in less than 2 years he mastered magic you could never dream of weaving. And you should be happy that the new master knows what he's doing instead of casting shadows in his direction, said Melina, smiling. But how am I to approach him? He knows of my association with the previous master. What if he has me killed or worse, said Sassari, gulping. Sibano is too much of a dandy to hold grudges for very long, and try some good old-fashioned bootlegging. It will go a long way with this particular character, said Melina. If there is no other choice, said Sassari, bootlegging is something that I'm used to. There is a limit to how much one can grovel to get ahead in life, and it will not cure you to grow a spine or two, commented Melina. That's easy for you to say, Melina. You don't fear anything, said Sassari. Fanny noticed Melina grow quiet for a moment, and she guessed that Melina was deciding whether to fall for Cedric's trap or not, and she bit her lip and she sneered before saying, If you are curious, I can give you a short list of the things that I'm afraid of. I am curious about that myself, said Fanny, coming to sit beside Melina, and taking her hand, she said, You never share any of your thoughts or worries, and appear that you are bothering everything up, and it isn't healthy for you to burden yourself so. Tell us, my lady, said Cedric, paying concern. Sighed Melina, said, I am only going to say this once, so pay attention. I am afraid of adult men, the color pink, of being in a committed relationship. I am afraid of getting fat, and I hate germs too. Oh, this certainly makes you seem a bit more human, commented Cedric, taken aback by Melina's sudden burst of honesty, and he felt silly remembering that Melina never lied. You forget, my dear, heard Cedric. I am not human, said Melina. You don't look the part, and most of the time you sport those bizarre cyan colors, said Cedric. Unlike you, I am in complete control of my emotion. As for the cyan color, it applies to an emotion that those silly forest nymphs are familiar with, said Melina. This ought to be good, said Cedric, laughing. Melina narrowed her cyan eyes and got up and opened the door, and Cedric understood the hint and he left her presence. And at other times Cedric would stay and provoke Melina's ire. However, he had developed a healthy respect for her throwing arm. So if suddenly she would throw him something. Ow! When Cedric left, Melina asked Franny, Have you heard news from your mother? Not really. It's strange. She usually writes a lot, said Franny. I had a feeling that some of our letters are being intercepted, said Melina. To what end? I have a theory, but I am not ready to share it. I do not know that this new element does not belong to the lords, nor the knights or the elves for that matter. This pouring element only has a vague idea of how things work in this world, said Melina. After Fanny finished her briefing, she left Melina alone, and Melina rose from her seat and she went to sit under Impedia's painting. This painting was behind Imperia's workplace, and it was hung in a thinly tiled wall, and the acoustics of the wall made it easy for the sound to travel to Imperia's room. My sources tell me that the Dwarven Kingdom has finished consolidating their power, and their newly unified front is causing a few lords in the capital to worry, said Imperia behind the painting. The lords will frown over anyone that shows a unified front. The same could be said of the giants and the nagas, and the giants and nymphs are too rustic and peaceful to warrant their attention, though I fear that the Lord's constant bullying of the other races will cause problems in the near future, said Melina. The Nagas. You are referring to the ape-men, Melina. You give them far too much credit, said Imperia, laughing. You thought the same thing about me when we first met, and now here we are, said Melina. I am surprised that His Highness tolerates this open nonsense, considering the Alphaseer's audacious attack. It is a wonder that the elves had not gone the way of the goblins and the orcs, said Impedia. Impedia was alluding to Bersame's systematic destruction of the goblins and orc race, and this incident occurred more than 200 years ago. The dwarves barely survived the extinction too, and they survived because they hid, and Bersame kept a few alive more as a novelty or as pets, and they no longer had a semblance of the once proud people they used to be, said Melina sadly. More the pity they could have been used for digging a tunnel beneath the walls of Verageddon, said Impedia. Not really. Dwarves are not moles, and it is a common misconception that just because they live on the ground that they are good diggers. True, they have generations of specialized knowledge on that matter, but it would take the dwarves decades to create a tunnel big enough to transport an entire army, said Melina. Impedia was silent for a moment, and then she said, then a siege battle it is. I wouldn't recommend it, said Melina. Impedia heard Melina leave the office and close the door behind her, and it was close to midnight, and this was the usual time when Melina went on her nightly rounds. And while walking outside, she ran into Sir Walter, and he was sitting in a hammock gazing at the Titan moon. And the night had a delicate golden glimmer. The night, as in, not the night guy, but like the night sky.
Got it.
Trouble sleeping, asked Melina. My classmen are starting to gather funds for a campaign against Verageddon, said Sir Walter, sighing. Money won't buy them victory. The capital is impregnable, and one can't take a single step without 1,000 eyes trailing after you, said Melina. A few of my classmates' spies have noted a weakness in the wall fortifications, commented Sir Walter. It is called an irresistible lure, a bottleneck strategy. And besides, the true walls of Verageddon are its building. Each one can be its own citadel, and they are strong enough to withstand the weight and flames of a dragon. And even with an army of 1 million, it will be impossible to take the capital, said Melina, sitting in a bench facing the hammock. So, like, it's not that the walls are strong, it's that the buildings themselves are each a little mini fortress. So even if they break the walls, they're still not gonna make it. Because then all of the little houses are, are their own, they can be shot up from there as well. I see, maybe we can win if we fight their dragons with our own, said Sir Walter, sitting up. Oh sure, go into the forest and find yourself a dragon. It is just that easy, said Melina in a mocking tone. I do not like your tone of voice, Melina, said Sir Walter, and I do not like your tone of voice either, Sir Walter. You are thinking of joining your classmen in a foolish fight that has no hope for success, and take a cue from the elves, and wait and bide your time, insisted Melina. The elves and the nymphs had time on their sides, but we humans grow weary of living under the yoke of Pertame, said Sir Walter, standing up. Joke, please. Your classmates have greatly benefited from Pertame's rule, and your patron simply wants a chance to lord over the masses, and he's sending his clan to die or to satisfy his own ambitions, said Melina coldly. Watch it, Melina, that's my father you're bad-mouthing, said Sir Walter, shaking his fist. How long have you known me, Sir Walter? I say things as I see it. As for your father, we became acquainted during my time in Verageddon. Trust me, he's a selfish, good-for-nothing prick. And what is a father, really? And his failure means that your mothers and sisters are going to become slaves. And is that the kind of life you wish for them, said Melina, looking at Sir Walter with a clear, white eyes. We became acquainted, you know what that's another way of that. I said, with your daddy, Sir Walter. Sir Walter turned pale when he heard this, and he was too caught up with the idea of an honorable death to consider the fate of those who will be left behind, and his wife and his newborn daughter too. What was to become of them without his protection? Melina came to stand to face Sir Walter, and she lowered his head so that his ear would be lightly graze her lips, and in a soft hissing whisper she said, You know what you must do. Sir Walter never admitted to killing his father, said Gregory de Alba, though he was the prime suspect during the investigation, and all those relatives secretly suspected of being loyal to Bersame, and under Sir Walter's leadership, the Alba clan sheathed its blade. And they were content to wait 6 years to see if Melina's so-called prophecy came true. And as of now, the rumor that Bersame was dying had widely circulated over the kingdom, and this rumor alone was enough to inspire dissent and small bursts of violence were starting to become commonplace in the cities away from Veragero. And Melina found these reports quite laughable. Bersamet's death was no guarantee for success. He was but a figurehead, a potent figurehead, mind you, with enough strength and charisma to even tame dragons. The true rulers of Veragero were the 21 elders, and they were prepared to take the reins in the eventuality of Bersamet's death. So, like, even if the king crows, the Hydra still has 21 other heads. Alright, so we're done with this. Bye bye and God bless.